So in this clip, I'd like to talk more about the different layers of bias, oppression, and privilege, and how they play out in our culture and in our society. And this is coming from Brofenbrenner's 1979 ideas around, or ecological models around layers in which equity and diversity and social justice can play out. And so in doing equity and diversity work, we must address the individual social, cultural, and institutional ways oppression and privilege play out in our societies and our culture, and how they impact us as well. So first we can start with the inner circle, the individual. So an individual may experience bias from others because of an identity, but not experience social cultural stereotypes and negative messages or systematic barriers in our society. So an example might be a white person living in a majority Latinx neighborhood may feel like a, quote, minority because they are one of few people in the area that is white. However, when that person watches TV, leaves the neighborhood, accesses educational systems and institutions, they will still maintain their privilege as a white person. So even although individually might feel like they're the only one within a community, still larger in society and larger in our culture can experience some privilege and access that people of color do not. So we can move to the inner circle, which is sociocultural. So we can think about a person or a group of people may experience support and acceptance on the individual level, but still experience oppression and marginalization at the social, cultural, and institutional levels. Attitudinal barriers can be the biggest. So an example might be a young gay, a young gay man may have grown up in a family and community that was very supportive to him. However, in the mainstream media, he sees very little representations of LGBTQ communities, and systematically he does not have the same legal protections as his heterosexual peers. So again, might receive some support on the individual level, but still feels impact of bias and oppression in our culture and in our institutions. And then the outer circle, institutional and systematic, we can think about a new law may be put in place to remove barriers for people with disabilities. However, there still remain stereotypical images and attitudes about people with disabilities at the social cultural level that can impact them also individually. So an example might be the American with Disabilities Act, or ADA, which became law in 1990. However, we know that there's been things like the Jerry Lewis Telethon that was still aired until 2014, and this telethon has been critiqued by disability justice advocates and how it portrays people with disabilities in patronizing ways. And because it's embedded thoughts and images of what a person with a disability could accomplish in non-disabled person's point of view. That's just one example of how we can have a law in place, but still have some stereotypes perpetuated that are very negative. So even with ADA, people with disabilities still make an average of 37% less than other workers. And among those with a bachelor's degree, the second greatest disparity in Minnesota, we see this as well. So we see folks making, $18,000 or less with income. So even people with disabilities with a bachelor's degree are still making a lot less money than those who are non-disabled. So this image just helps sort of simplify the complexities of how bias, oppression, and privilege play out, and to highlight how important it is that we address these different layers when we're thinking about our own and others' experience with bias, oppression, and privilege.